the events that are unfolding since the 24th of November, or on the 24th of November, have December, sorry, yes, been known by now. I think those who weren't in the know, it would have come as a shock. Those who were in the know obviously knew, and so on. But I think the issue is how to move on. Now I know you're aware that there are developments on the parliamentary front and the legal front. We all have to await the outcome of those. I think the important thing is that Parliament is still in session. It has not been dissolved. Two, there is a government, and there will be a government until such time as the government has been voted out of office, right? So there will be a government. Three, there is a budget for the fiscal year 2019, the whole of 2019. So the issue about cuts to the budget and so on are not now in vogue, so to speak, right? So this is not a scenario where there's no budget and you're restricted to 1/12 in accordance with the law. We have a passed budget. We have a budget. I think it might have been signed into law already by the president. If not, then I'm sure he will be doing that by the time he gets back from Cuba. So you will have a whole budget. We have the measures to be passed on the 3rd and 4th of January when the parliament reconvenes to give credence to the various measures that we have announced in the budget. So many of them have to be done by legislation, and some pieces of those legislation have to be debated. Others are by negative resolution, which mean they're laid in the National Assembly, and after a certain time, they become like force of law, and so on. So the 3rd and the 4th will be days designated for the debate on the measures and consequent passage, and so people can enjoy, for example, their increase in income tax threshold, right? The private sector can enjoy a reduction in the rate of corporation tax to 25%. People can have the knowledge that they can get their refunds when owed by the GRA, and the many positive measures that Budget 2019 have been. In fact, even over the holidays, I've been getting email from various people. I got one from Houston yesterday, indicating that they were on YouTube listening to the budget and the wind up of the debate, and they sent a text to congratulate me on it, and hope that we will continue in the same vein. So there's a lot of goodwill going forward for the government, and we have to ride this wave and ride it into 2020 and ride it into our next 5 years.
So, you don't feel, do you feel that with what you just said, that this event or this development that took place in the parliament, it's in no way putting a damper on the work that the government has to do?
No, well, certainly not where the economy is concerned. We can't hold the economy back for certain events to unfold. There's an economy to run. By the doctrine of necessity, a government has to be in place to run the country. And as I said, we have not been voted out of office. Yeah. It's only then that the government can demit office. So we haven't been voted out of office. And until there is new elections and a new president is sworn in, the government of the day remains the government of the day. And the government of the day has to do things that are consistent with government, whether it's law and order, the economy, collecting taxes, paying wages, projects that are in place, and so on. So, and as I said, there are legal issues surrounding the vote that was taken on December 24th. So I would leave that force to the Parliament on the 3rd, when the Speaker is supposed to make a comment, and the events that will unfold subsequently thereafter.
But
because to me, regardless how the Speaker rules on the 3rd, I know this matter is going to end up in court, maybe straight up to the CCJ. So I know that it's going to happen. So.
But at this point, you're prepared for anything.
Yes, no. At this point, I have to, as the Minister of Finance, I have to make certain that the country is running. We have international obligations, and we're part of an international community. You know, and they're not waiting on us to decide what we have to do. So we have to proceed, right, until otherwise told.
My final question on this topic: were you at all taken aback or shocked?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I said, those who didn't know would have been taken aback, shocked, and everything else. The individual that I associated with for the last 3+ years appeared to be a very affable individual, very jovial person. He made some very positive comments to me at the wind up of the debate and so on. I was encouraged by his performance in his own debate. I mean, this is unbelievable, unheard of, you know. But like I said, that has been done, and I personally wasn't shocked to the extent that he couldn't recover, you know. But I think, like I said, I keep saying throughout this year, and it's been part of my life, that out of every challenge and every problem comes an opportunity, you know. And what we would have seen there, either way it ends, is an opportunity for us to sell our programs. I admit, so many people have admitted that we have not been good as a government selling all the positive things that we have done, essentially. I mean, if you come in, you reach a broken sugar industry, and the government is being blamed for the broken sugar industry. I mean, that's the level of to which we have sunk. But we as a government are partly to be blamed for having a PR that hasn't resonated. I'm not saying we don't have a PR, but it hasn't resonated, and it hasn't carried a clear message, apparently, and it doesn't resonate with our people at the bottom. You know, we were there out on the 24th, out in Starbucks Square, and there's an outpouring of goodwill there, and people's admonition to us is that we had to get a better PR going. You know, is that people, we are doing things, but people, we're not telling the people, we're not meeting the people, we're not letting them know, and so on. So the positive out of what happened there is that, if you want to call it a wake-up call, and it's an opportunity to do better, so that by whenever the next election, you would have repaired some of the damage that people saw you did. But otherwise, I'm telling you, this Christmas is without a doubt, the greatest, I believe, since we have been in office. I mean, there's no lie, there's no anything about it. I mean, the tremendous Georgetown, as you saw, all over Georgetown, Giftland, all over. It was spending like never before. And whichever private sector agency says that they were scraping, I think they have one eye on the income tax commissioner, essentially, probably trying to lay low. But I believe all wrong, everybody was happy with the performance of the economy, and everybody was happy with their back pay, and everybody was happy with the fact that they got their back pay tax-free. You know, so, and I'm happy for them too, and I hope they still have some money left in January.
Money finish.
Money finish, yes. Well, it shouldn't be doing that all the time. You must break January something in your pocket.
Yes.
You know, they said the guava months are really January, February, March. Right. You know, so, but you know, so I hope they keep something.
I want a review of the year. You had some challenges, but it was nothing compared, in my opinion, to when you first came in office, like 2015, 16, 17. But you had some challenges. Just speak a little about, give us a synopsis of how has the year been for you.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, 2018 is the best year we've had since we've come to office. In many respects, we were able to achieve significant parts of our program. And of course, one of the reasons it turned out to be such a good year is because we were relieved of the financial burden to some extent um, of Gaisuku. I say to some extent because if you realize in 2018 we still had to put $6.5 billion plus another 5 point something billion to pay for severance. So we are hoping that all transfers as relates to Treasury to Gaisuku are finally over, and this will allow us to broaden our spending in terms of sectors for 2019. And as you can see, every sector uh, has had better allocations, and I'm positing that at the human resource level, we will be able to improve incomes to public servants 2019 and beyond. We have said it very plainly. If we had $38.5 billion that was transferred to Gaisuku over the last 3 years, if we had that available for the public servants, just think about all the possibilities. Because you have a commercial corporation that is supposed to be adding to the treasury that for years and years and years was taken from the treasury. Okay? So now we are hoping that we're in a situation where monies released from having to pay to Gaisuku can now be used to do a number of other could be used to finance a number of programs, including improving the emoluments of public servants in 2019 and beyond.
Yeah, on that note, there was no money, no sort of money allocated for Gaisuku in 2019.
That's correct. No monies are allocated for Gaisuku in 2019. They will be paid from their operations together with the bond. The bond that was yes, 30, but 16 and a half is what we have secured so far. Okay, so they will be paid from that and the incomes that they can generate from their current operations.
But do you think that is sufficient?
Well,
given how their financial issues and so on?
Well, let's put it this way: they have a financial program that they have put to the government and they've put to the SPU, Special Purpose Unit, and I believe that they are working towards that. The positive about this year too is that they have exceeded their target, and hopefully in 2019 they can do even better. Their overall target going into 2021 is about 150,000 tons of sugar. So hopefully they are on target to get there once the reforms that they are doing and the recapitalization that they are engaged in can go through without too much hiccups. Yes, but if you go back to the question that you asked earlier, but there are a number of other achievements in 2018. For example, if you recall, we passed 4 bills, as remembered, in the financial sector to strengthen the financial sector and to help it prepare for what is to come in our future. And the import of those bills, I don't think justice has been done to them, but hopefully we can roll out a PR program, and hopefully the press themselves will pay more attention to such important bills, because rather than the regurgitation of the bills, I think it is important to let people know and understand exactly what these bills mean for them. I mean, for example, for the first time in Guyana, you're going to get a deposit insurance scheme. And we keep saying, had that been in place, many of the depositors in Globe Trust, for example, would have got back a significant part of, all or a significant part of their income. We have a national payment system bill that is now law, which will be paving the way for the eventually, not necessarily a paperless financial system, but certainly one that will reduce the need for cash in many transactions that we conduct. Right? We have another bill that talks about how we deal with financial institutions that are in distress, and so on. So although the press covered these bills, actually the coverage, I don't know when it helped the ordinary person to understand precisely the import of these bills. And so I guess we're going to have to do even more PR to let people understand. We also talk about financial literacy. You know, I mean, people, that is one area for me personally. I don't know whether we'll be able to get in place, but we need to do a lot more programs about financial literacy in Guyana. And how the customer, and how the customer can take charge, essentially, because right now the customer feels that they are the mercy of banks and other financial institutions, and this is a situation we want to correct quickly as we can. And one is that all customers ought to be aware of exactly what they are involved in and what they're getting into when they go to. Of course, a signal development for this year has been the fact that we were able to produce a green paper. We were happy with the tremendous comments that it brought forth, positive and negative, and that helped us to improve the draft bill that we had, so that you can see the bill that is in Parliament now. I can say that I thought it would have been a firestorm by now, but I haven't seen any major comment on the bill, and which is quite interesting, because the Green Paper had brought forth a tremendous amount of comment. But we have our Natural Resource Fund bill in Parliament. It has had its first reading, and it's slated for passage hopefully in January, or certainly close to January, if not January, maybe early February or something. But we have to have that bill in place prior to force oil, so that we can put in place the various mechanism, procedures, draft regulations, and so on. You know, so hopefully it doesn't get held up, or it doesn't get fall hostage to what is going on right now. All right. Other areas is the fact that, of course, again, we have been able to produce an early budget. Thank God that we have a budget in place, third year in a row. It's tremendous work to get a budget out before the start of the fiscal year. Our system is still of a molasses type, very slow, very hard to react, and so on. But nothing gets done unless a start is made. And so 3 years, and there have been measured improvements in our preparation, and over time, it can only get better. We have had our half-year report produced well in advance of the closure of Parliament. You know, I mean, people don't even seem to remember that the half-year report is due on the 28th or 29th of August. And we have produced that half-year report in every instance except one, I believe, before the close, before Parliament goes into its recess in August. Another important milestone. So we have been making quite a bit of strides, and I'm proud of the staff of the ministry. We have had some makeover especially during 2018, and that is important for the work of the ministry, the challenging work of the ministry. We need healthy bodies, we need strong bodies, we need bright people in a number of the areas. And the good thing about here is that we have quite a few young people. We have several studying abroad who will come back next year, and they're going to places like Japan, right? England, of course, right? We have one going out in January to the World Bank for 6 months, right? So we have in place right now a new finance secretary, all right? Exceptionally well qualified, originally from Stouffville, but worked for the last 20-something years in St. Lucia in the Ministry of Finance. And at the moment, he's a PhD candidate with UWI at University of West Indies. We have a very good Deputy Finance Secretary. you might not be aware, but that was the first time that the Deputy Finance Secretary position was advertised publicly. And the individual is very well qualified, very well experienced, and is already making a big difference in that area. We also have a new Chief Executive Officer of the National Procurement and Tender Administration. She has had long years of experience in the same areas at the European Union, very well qualified also. So, and we have had some changes in other areas. We have a fine IT unit now. During the year, we recruited quite a few solid people in our unit to help us with the changes to the IFMIS, moving away from the IFMA. So we count our blessings.
But I have two questions in relation to the 4 financial bills that were passed. You said there needs to be more financial literacy
Yes.
And education done.
Yes.
Is this something you want to focus more extensively on in 2019? And coming back apart from the technical jargons of the bill of itself, speak to the ordinary man. How are these bills expected to benefit them?
Yes, well, that's what I was doing earlier on, to tell him how the bills would benefit them. I talk about the Globe Trust, for example, that one of the bills now speaks to deposit insurance. We're in now, as a result, eventually when that gets comes on stream, that depositors can expect to get back some amount, depending on how large the deposit you had. Because I think the bill speaks to about, I can't remember if it's 2 million or 3 million. But many of these people are small savers. So an institution in distress, depositors can expect to get back some amount of the money. But not only that, there are ways of winding up, and there are ways of helping, of the Bank of Guyana helping institutions that are in distress, where before this was not the case. So that helps to encourage and give confidence to depositors, whereas before they might have been at the mercy of the commercial bank or other financial institution. I spoke about the issue about getting to paperless. Many people are concerned with the amount of cash that is being used for transactions daily. And I talk about the fact that we have a national payment system in place. So these are some of the important. These are some of the systems and procedures and so on that we'll be putting in place to help to make certain that the ordinary depositor gets help, and that the system itself is strengthened so that an occurrence such as what is being contemplated in the bill doesn't occur. And when I speak to financial literacy, many people just deposit the money, but there aren't obligations on the part of, say, the financial institution, whether orally or otherwise, to explain certain matters to people. And the details are always in the fine print. I remember when I bought my first insurance way back in 1974, you needed a magnifying glass to read the fine print. And having read it in any case, how does a 17-year-old understand all this jargon and that is being thrown at you? But all that happens when somebody wants to sell insurance, they say sign here, and they're seeking to explain a mountain of paper in a little 10 or 50 minutes and ask you to sign. So we have to have laws created that make it obligatory on financial institutions to, and this occurs in the United States. I had experience with banking, not being a bank, but being a depositor in the United States, because attended university there, you have to open accounts and so on, and you will be fed information, every minute in the post. When your bank statement comes, it comes with another something as to what is happening in the bank, and they're required by law to, whenever a certain change is happening or is about to happen, they're required to notify, and you can put in your 2 cents. Here, I don't know whether we have laws where the banks have to notify you about certain changes. I don't know whether where you have places to object, and so on. Explaining interest rates, how your, we get interest on our accounts every 6 months, our savings account, and we smile. We smile and we get, you get a little top up. We don't know how they calculate it. Okay? We don't know how they calculate that interest. Yeah, we don't know whether they're right or wrong. So we have to have that knowledge, right? We have to have that knowledge. Repayment of loans. When you think that you have repaid on your principal or whatever, you hear that all your money has gone to interest and late interest and disinterest and all this kind of thing. No, a lot of this is not known to the customer. A lot of this is not known. And there are other areas like, you suddenly see a $100 come out of your account. When you go and ask, we have a policy that if you don't something, they take out $100. This is never known to you. Or the board has met and decided. Nobody writes you about this so that you could exercise an option of either to remain with that bank or move your account, or move your money out and so on. So all of this is, in terms of financial, we have to make these things mandatory. That the bank provides this kind of information to customers in a way that the customer can understand and the way the customer can exercise options.
Especially with public bank.
Well, yeah.
Yes. The tax can we have an update on the tax review committee? I know in 2019 there were no new taxes introduced, but there were other areas where we saw tax concessions and so on being granted to the private sector bodies and so private sector companies and so. But we haven't heard much about the work of the tax review committee.
Well, the tax review committee met, I think, in 2015, and they produced a report. Okay, and they made several recommendations. At the same time, we had a report from CARTAC. They produced a report. They made several recommendations. And what we have been doing over the last 3 years is looking at all those recommendations from both sides and try to find a mix that we feel, A, that can be sustainable, and B, will not meet with the objection of the public, so to speak. Yeah, and that's what we have been doing. So when a certain individual who writes all the time in the public domain say that we aren't following the tax reform committee, I said before and I say it again. When you commission a report, it is up to the owners of that report, who are the people who commission the report, to determine how they are going to deal with that report. There's no onus on the owners to implement any of the recommendations in the report, and there's no onus on the commissioners of the report to implement the recommendations in the manner or in the timeliness with which the report says. At the end of the day, a report sometimes when it comes to the government has the imprimatur of the technical people who did the report. The people who have to implement the report are politicians. You see, they're politicians. So if you tell me in the report that I should retax pensions as a means of taxing all incomes, that sounds good. Okay? That sounds good. Indeed, that is one of the recommendations of the tax reform committee, to tax pensions. No, you think as a politician, I'm going to go out there and tax pensions? You understand? So when you hear, how a report is being created and the government not using a report, the government examine every one of those recommendations. And what it feels is politically saleable, those are the ones that are going to be implemented. The ones that are going to cause a lot of grief and are highly controversial will have to stay the course, have to remain behind, so to speak. Okay? And on that point, on that point of report, I had also, I believe, last year indicated that it is worrisome that the people who do reports and so on could be commenting on the report. In my book, it is highly unprofessional, right? For people who have been asked to do a report, who have been commissioned to do a report, to be commenting publicly on the report. The report is not their own. Regardless whether they did a report for free, it is still not their report. It is a report of the people who commissioned the report. And it's up to the people who commissioned the report to make it public or not. Right? So I have commented on that before, and I comment again that for people who would have been commissioned to do a report, to publicly commenting on the report, right, for me is unprofessional.
To expound a little on the thinking of the government for not introduce no new taxes for next year.
Well, not only for next year. I'm telling you, we have not introduced a single tax, new tax, since we came to power. So I don't ever use the mantra of no new tax. We have not introduced a single new tax. And I told in the wind-up debate, I told the speaker that the next time the opposition made a reference to 200 new taxes, I'm going to ask that they bring to the floor a listing of the 200 new taxes that we have done. You've been here all your time since this government been here. Name me one new tax that this government has brought. One new tax. Just name it. So enough is enough when it comes to this story about new tax. Not a single new tax. On the contrary, we have reduced taxes in many areas. Many areas. We have reduced taxes. We have increased the threshold, and so forth. So, and if you, and all you have to do is go back to the 5 budgets that have been produced and go to the measures. Go to the measures and see if we have introduced any new taxes since we have come into this thing. And you might be amazed if you put into the 5 budget all the measures that we have done side by side. They have no time in the history of this country, no time in the history of this country, that so many measures in favor of the various tax, in favor of the various stakeholders, at no time has it ever been done by any government in their first 3 years of government. No time. So it is the mantra, and maybe the people at Starbuck Market on 24 were right. We have not been able to get out. You want to tell you something else we have not been able to get out? Do you know that come the end of this year, it will be the 2nd consecutive year in which not a single cent has been used from the contingency fund? I can tell you without perhaps favor of contradiction, this is unheard of in the last 3 decades or more. Unheard of. It will be the 2nd consecutive year when not a single cent has been taken from the contingency fund. 2017 and now 2018.
How have you managed to do that?
Well, we rode on the back of better accountability, transparency in the government, and so forth. I, being a former budget director, for many, many, many years, a former advisor in budgeting and so on, and and a person who's dedicated to financial and fiscal prudence, um, wanted to adhere to what the Constitution says. Okay? And the so-called fight that the people said I had with the Attorney General, I have no fight with the Attorney General. Attorney General is not my boss. You understand? But all I was reminding that the Constitution resides in the Minister of Finance, how to use the contingency fund. Now, everybody's saying that you always had different interpretations and so on. He has his interpretation, I have mine. I think one thing both of us agree on, though, that it must reach the threshold of an emergency. Now, therein lies your issue about emergency. As you can see right now, majority, your definition and my definition of majority is not necessarily the same. It's what the Constitution had in mind, what the framers of the Constitution had in mind. What is an emergency? You can't go to a book definition of an emergency. You can't tell me I should have foreseen the fact, as I said then, that X thing should have happened and therefore budget for it, and so on. That we try to do as much as possible. But this world will not be the same if we were able to foresee every single event. Every single event. And you have to be there at a point in time to determine whether it's an emergency. Not 9 months after the event would have taken place, and you sitting down in some office saying, oh, you bought a car? That's not an emergency. And you have to go back to the point in time when the decision was made by the Minister of Finance to accept it was a case of emergency, to determine, to do the test. Not 9 months after or a year after, and so on. But having said that, we have, insofar, been able to manage to such an extent to use within the Constitution what has been given to us. And what has been given to us are supplementary appropriation bills. And I think we have up to 5 of them in law, 5 or 6 of them, I think, and I believe those can be properly used within the law to get around event. There will be emergencies, but for the time being, we have been able to manage without recourse to the contingencies fund in 2017, which went unheralded, by the way, by the press indeed. Because I spoke to a certain journalist and I said, your newspaper had a blazing headline. Our journal says X amount used for the contingency fund. I said in 2016 that happened. I said in 2017, you didn't hear a single headline. And although there were promises of making this known, it never happened. Because good news, as you know, don't sell newspapers. It's the so-called bad news that sells. So I'm making it public. That 2017 was the first year in decades where where recourse was not done to the contingency fund. And with a couple more days left in 2018, barring any eventuality to the contrary, 2018 will also see the second consecutive year in which no recourse has been made to the contingency fund.
So the government was able to, I should put it, live within their means.
The government was able to use the other mechanisms, the other legal mechanism, which is supplementary appropriations, to deal with issues. And it's all about timing, okay, and during the year predicting. So during this year, we had to alter some expenditure to find monies for the severance. So we did that in January of 2018. I think we had a paper that went in June or July of 2018, and then we had another one that went, I think, in November of 20. So I think we used about 3 supplementary, and we allowed, I think, 5 or 6 in a year, in a fiscal year.
Coming back to Gaisuko, earlier this year there were some sort of, I think your words were infighting and outfighting, no infighting and outfighting between the SPU and NISIL. Have you been able, or have have they been able to, iron out their differences to know? This has to do in relation with the bond and who gets what and stuff.
Yeah, well, I think it's some of that stuff is personality driven as opposed to process driven, really. I think you will know that the assets of the shares of Gaisuku, all 100% of the shares of Gaisuku was vested in NISEL, right, as the governance corporation that owns all the shares. So technically that makes NISEL the owner of Gaisuku on behalf of the government. Okay, and part of the reason for vesting the shares there is because we had to find a mechanism of how to raise financing. Gaisuku on its own could not go out and raise financing. Okay, and the rump Gaisuku anyhow, rump Gaisuku, which is what left back after we hived off the last making ones, couldn't go out to any commercial bank or to the financial market and raise capital that needed. So this had to be done by NISEL, which, as you know, owns all the government corporations, or is the keeper of government corporations. And it is those assets that had been used to raise the bond. Now, the bond is not a simple case of going to the bank and raise money. Even if you went to the bank and raised money, it will come with conditions. So the bond has written into it a set of conditions about how this money can be used by Gaisuku. I think sometimes that's where the temperature rises between the two. Coupled with the fact that the estates that were owned by government were just that, estates. There was no delineation as to what assets each estate owned, essentially. So in the hiving off, when you hived off the 4 estates, what precisely did you hive off? Okay? So in the case of the LBI compound, which seems to be the latest one that causing all the issues and stuff, NISEL argues that according to transport and according to the vesting order, LBI is part of their property. Gaisuku, on the other hand, says no, this was excluded. But for me, this is childish arguments. This is not a private sector versus a public sector. These are 2 public sector entities. And for the good of both, you could easily come together and say, okay, look, we're going to use it, both of us. Okay? Don't just worry too much about who owns what, because we're not about to sell it. Let's sit down, determine, what it can be used for and so on. But like I said, when personalities clash, like 2 elephants, only the grass can suffer. But His Excellency has been on to this, and I believe when he gets back, this will be part of his agenda as he makes yet another attempt to cool the temperature and allow people to see that this is one government and not a private sector or public sector entity. These are 2 public sector entities that belong to the government and ought to behave similarly.
There are also 10 proposals that were submitted in terms of the divestment. What stage are we at now? Because from the last press conference with Pricewaterhouse, they updated us as it relates to that. But where are we?
Well, my last understanding, which I told Parliament during the questioning on the Ministry of Finance estimates, was that we should see some action somewhere between March and May of next year, essentially. In terms of land sales, there's been tremendous interest in that area. The government believes that in order for these land sales to have more than just financial meaning, because the person with a couple $2 billion could buy out all our land, wishes to establish what is called a land sales committee to oversee the sales and to make it a legal entity. So this has been going on over the last months to set up this committee. And once that could get going, that will involve both I believe it will involve the Lands Commission, the NISIL, um, Gaisuko maybe, and whoever else, to get these sales going, because it's important, because the forced payment on the bond is due in May, and the idea was that that payment will be made from sales, land and the estate, one of the estates or so. So time is ticking where that is concerned, and we have to get that going. But there's tremendous interest in the lands in sort, especially the areas of Wales and so on. You could understand why Wales now has become an important area because of the whole oil and so on. People need waterfront property, people need housing and so on, and the bridge that would be built and so on.
I have two more questions. Oil and gas. Let's turn our attention to oil and gas. We see in the budget some major things happening in anticipation of the oil and gas sector. So let's speak to that. We saw monies for infrastructure, the GRA, oil and gas unit being established and so forth.
Well, starting from my ministry here, once we get the Natural Resource Fund bill passed, there are a number of committees to be established, and we have to move with haste to get those established. The Sovereign Wealth Fund Committee, the Macroeconomic Committee, the committee with the Bank of Guyana for the investment, and so we have to move quickly to get those. We've been assisted by the World Bank on the one hand and IDB on the other financially. We got some money early in the year, and in December here we got some money from the IDB. So those will be used to, some of the money will be used to strengthen the Guyana Revenue Authority, the Department of Energy. Hopefully we can use some also to establish the exports that are required for some of these committees, because it's hard to pay exports with the kind of monies that we will be able to offer. So hopefully we can get a start there. And once oil money kicks in and so on, we could do better than we are at the moment. Then, of course, the Statistical Bureau, we have been able to get some assistance, or we've asked IDB also for some assistance, because they need strengthening as relates to the national accounts, how to incorporate oil and gas into the national accounts of Guyana, and also the balance of payments. Also in the balance of payments. And Bank of Guyana also will need some strengthening to deal with the investment advisor and so on, because the bank needs some people there. I don't think they have the caliber of people that is required to do that kind of job, or they need some more in terms of strengthening. And so the GRA has a large tax unit and the oil and gas unit. Those are fledgling units, but will be supplemented by some consultants that we can import into the area. I'd love to see Guyanese from the diaspora come in and spending some time in the area once they're well known, well qualified and so on. The Department of the Environment will also have to have some strengthening, because they have a critical role. They have a critical role to play where that is concerned. But definitely the Department of Energy will need rapid strengthening, because at the moment I think they have Mr. Wilkes and Dr. Bino, but they need to build capacity in that agency quickly, so that the road to fossil is narrowing.
So have you started looking, you said there's experts that are needed, but have you started looking?
Oh, well, we don't even have to look. I mean, every day we're flooded with with interest. Every day we're flooded with interest as such. I noticed they had some issues or developing issues surrounding talking with Merrill Lynch and so on. I don't see any reason why, if people approach you, why you should chase them. Talk is just that, talk. And whether they have been good, naughty, or bad in the past and so on, and they approach you to talk, you talk. It doesn't mean that they're getting a contract. We said in the Natural Resource Fund bill, everything has to be by a transparent mechanism. So everything has to either be tendered or near tender. Near tender in the sense that if somebody is the only person in that field or so on, then you use restricted tendering, or single source. But it will be hard to single source, for example, the investment advisor, no matter how well qualified they come, because you have many more out there. And all the good advice that they're giving, that we should do the background and all kind of things, all that will take place. All of that. I remember, I think 2 years ago, when Mr. Clico man came here to talk to me. You suddenly hear that I'm striking a deal. All the man asks for is an audience. Should I tell him don't come? I sat there, you got the audience, I then said to him, listen, this is the scenario, we want our money back, and so on. Speak to Bank of Guyana, who's the liquidator, and so on. But every time, it has to be some issue. We're not engaging Merrill Lynch because we're signing a deal with them. Merrill Lynch asks to talk, you talk. Indeed, so many more people we have talked to, all over the world, European, UK, Canadian, even the Caribbean. People have come here over the last year just to tell you that they're the sweetest thing around and we should use them. And for those who I talked to, I haven't talked to Merrill Lynch. I said, well, listen, our law requires that these things be tendered out. Okay? So when the tender is issued, you can apply if you feel that you meet all the criteria. So to the public, I want to say, listen, we have no backroom deals to strike with anyone. Anyone. It will come back to haunt us anyhow. But we have no backroom deals to strike with anyone. All these things will be done by open tendering and accountable right through. That is why the first article, I believe, or close to the first article in the Natural Resource Fund bill, is the establishment of a Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, a 22-person committee, to show the importance that we put to accountability of the government, of other people. And on that committee, you have all kinds, the private sector, the trade unions, transparency, international, EITI, even the press is there. That is the reason why it's there as number one article before we talk about how to save the money all the time. The first article got to do with the Public Interest Accountability Committee. So be assured, public, notwithstanding all the hysteria you may see in certain newspapers and so on, as a country and as a member of the international community, we're obligated to talk to people. We can't chase them away. They come in a friendly manner. They come offering their services. We'll be polite. We'll listen, okay? And then we will tell them what is the law of the land. Some of them may come as introductory offers because lots of them never knew anything about Guyana. Never knew anything about Guyana. So lots of them are coming for introductory offers. Some of them are coming for a handshake and a photo. I don't know, they make mileage out of it and so on. But at the end of the day, everything will be done in accordance with our procurement laws and will be open and transparent. Okay? So not to worry if we're talking to Merrill Lynch or we're talking to Lambert and this or whoever else. In fact, it gives us a good picture anyhow. Anyhow. And we're not talking with them in secret, by the way. it's known that we're talking to them. So
Okay, can you speak to your legislative agenda for 2019?
2019,
Yes.
don't forget Scotia.
Huh?
Don't forget Scotia.
And Scotia. Yeah, with the pullout of Scotia, forward looking, what are your
Yeah.
thinking for 2019?
Well, in terms of the legislative agenda, what we had, of course, we have the Natural Resource Fund Bill. We have some amendments to the existing procurement legislation that I hope and that I can carry there in January. We had announced them in the budget, and I announced them in when we were doing the estimates for the Ministry of Finance. So those are very important amendments, about 3 or 4 of them, but very important. I should indicate that the consultant reviewed our procurement laws and found the Procurement Act to be deficient in many, many ways. Deficient in the standpoint that it don't use best practice. It doesn't incorporate, and more important, there's a CARICOM model legislation. So she has done a pretty good job, but the changes that she's recommending, there's so many, they can't really be done to the existing procurement law. So hopefully we can look at the rewriting of the law. Well, that takes some time. So in the meanwhile, we'll go through with these couple of changes.
What, you said 3. What are
Three or 4. I think it has to do with threshold. It has to do with sanctioning contractors who are errant. It has to be with establishing procurement plans. I think 3 or 4 of them. Threshold, establishing procurement plans, dealing with errant contractors. And I think there's a 4th one, essentially. So hopefully those are being drafted by the Attorney General's chambers, and as soon as they're finished, we'll try and get them into Parliament. I also intended to bring in 2019 the customs single window bill that seeks to incorporate ASICUDA and the whole single window activities that we have been doing with the Ministry of Business.
the automated?
Yes, automated single window. There's also the public debt management law that had been drafted before by the Commonwealth Secretariat, but is being reviewed right now by the World Bank to see where the gaps are in the legislation. I don't know whether it will get there, because it is almost the 2nd year already that our stock exchange bill, which is with the Attorney General's chambers, now almost a year and a half already, and the regulations have been drafted and they're to be reviewed by the AG's chambers. I don't know if it's going to get into the Parliament this year, but I would love to. It's a very big bill and very comprehensive regulations, and I'm hoping that they'll be able to finish it, so at least I can introduce it into the National Assembly this year. So I think those 1, 2, 3, 4, I think at the minimum those are, there may be a bill or 2 that I'm missing, but yeah, that's aspect of it. In terms of, sorry.
Yeah. Now I just want you to, how will the introduction of these bills sort of fast track or help with your work, the government's work?
Well, of course, the procurement aspect, the Natural Resource Fund bill, the single window would allow transactions as relates to customs and trade to be fast tracked using one single platform, right? The public debt law. You remember I have been reporting on the public debt every year, and this has been out of generosity as opposed to regulations or legislation. Well, once that bill gets passed, this will no longer be generosity, it will be a legal requirement, in addition to a number of other requirements that the public debt will do. The thing is that there are pieces to do, legislation to do with public debt is scattered all over the place. The Guarantees Bill, the External Loans Act, the local borrowing act, they're all over the place. So we're trying to bring all these pieces into one legislation together with trying to recognize, trying to close some loopholes as relates to borrowing in face of these incredible resources that will be coming to the fore. So those will be the stock exchange, obviously, modern legislation to be put in place that will allow more activity on the stock exchange. And by the way, while we're on stock exchange, you recall the attempted furor of the shares of stock feed to the owner, Badal. Okay? You know, sometimes you look at these things and I think people forgot that we had put into the public domain tenders for those shares. Not once, twice. Extended period those advertisements ran. On both occasions, the single tenderer was Mr. Badal. These shares are there to earn you zero dividends for the last 18 years. So it's as if you own something and you don't own it really. You know, it's like if you put your money in the bank and year after year you're getting zero interest. What's the purpose of keeping your money in the bank? And you're helpless because you can't go to the bank and say, listen man, you're not putting interest on my account. I can't go to Mr. Badal and say, listen man, you're not declaring dividends. He's the majority shareholder by far. And while I could tell him that, what is my legal recourse? To go to the court and force this man to declare dividends and let her get dividends? I mean, the way I'm saying it also points to the fact that we need legislation to protect the rights of minority shareholders. You know, in minority shareholders appear to have virtually no rights when it comes to companies, legislation, and so on. And I think it's an area we need to look at carefully. But anyway, so we attempted to sell these shares, you know, and get out of stock fees because, like I said, it's not bringing us anything. You know, lo and behold, you know, you get a big furor about we trying to sell shares and the value and all kind of thing. Well, trust me, the value of an asset, you have book value, you have sale value. And your book value may not necessarily equal your book value. Plus, you may have a valuation of the shares based on, and we had 3 different valuations here based on different ways in which you value shares and so on. And indeed, the valuation of these shares were above what the tenderer was tendering for these shares. But that is the way how sometimes business goes. Because look, we tried several times with Mr. Badal to up his offer. But if there's no competition, why would he up his offer? There's nobody competing for these shares. So what is the recourse? As they say, cut your losses and get out. You know, because next time you put the shares on the block, nobody will be interested in the shares, and especially since they are so small a minority, and you're not able to influence, you know, the declaration of dividends and so on.